Ms. Desai, am I saying your name right?
Senator, it's Desai.
Desai. You introduced your children, and I missed that part of your testimony. Are they here?
They are, Senator. My three daughters, one of them looks like she's asleep. She's probably not converted from Arizona time yet. They're 10, 7, and 5.
Okay. Kids, you can do a lot better than ice cream, okay? If you would like me to negotiate for you, I'll be happy to. Ms. Desai, Senator Durbin talked to you about a case on which you were counsel. Was that the case where plaintiffs sought to extend the voter registration period?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. This was a period of time set in statute by the legislature, as I recall, in which people in Arizona could vote.
Correct.
Right. And the plaintiffs wanted to extend that period of time.
Correct.
And they sued the Secretary of State?
Yes, Senator. Again, I wasn't involved at the trial court level, but if I remember correctly, the Secretary of State was a defendant. She might have been the only defendant, although I remember that the county recorders were involved at some point in that litigation.
Okay. And who was the Secretary of State then?
The Secretary of State at that time and currently in Arizona is Katie Hobbs.
And what party is she in?
She is a Democrat.
Okay. In that case, did you make the decisions, or did the Secretary of State make the decisions?
Senator, whenever I represent a client, I endeavor to make decisions with my client, and after advising my client fully of the options, take direction from my clients.
Yeah, that's the way it worked when I practiced law, too. The Secretary of State decided to settle the case and extend the time to register the vote. Is that the ultimate outcome of the case?
Senator, there was discussion about a settlement, but the settlement could not be, if I remember correctly, there was not enough time to enter into and finalize a settlement. So the ruling from the Ninth Circuit panel is the ruling that the parties ultimately implemented for purposes of determining the outcome of the voter registration deadline.
So the Secretary of State and the plaintiffs went to the Ninth Circuit and asked the Ninth Circuit to issue that ruling?
Senator, what happened in that case, to the best of my recollection, is that there was conversations with all of the parties, so the plaintiffs, the Secretary of State, as well as counsel for interveners, which were both presidential campaigns. I think also the
Yes,
parties.
ma'am. Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm going to run out of time, Counselor. My understanding is, and I think it's accurate, that the Secretary of State and the plaintiffs went to the Ninth Circuit and said, we have worked this out. We recommend that you rule this particular way. Isn't that what happened?
Senator, I think it was all of the parties.
Right, all of the parties.
Correct, including the interveners, which included the political parties and the campaigns for both presidential candidates.
Okay. So the Ninth Circuit ended up changing the state statute, ultimately.
Senator, the order from the Ninth Circuit, I believe, was to reverse the district court's order extending the voter registration deadline, but allowing voters who had relied on that opinion or that order and registered to accept those voter registrations.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I've got 13 seconds. Ms. Pryor, explain to me, Judge Pryor, excuse me, explain to me the legal basis for a universal injunction.
For a universal
Universal injunction, the legal basis.
The legal standard for nationwide.
Not the standard, the legal basis. Where do the federal district judges get the power to issue a universal injunction that affects everybody in the United States?
I understand, Mr. Kennedy, that question as to whether or not judicial officers have extended and gone beyond their limited power under Article 3 is a highly debated question of both public debate and discussion.
Yes, ma'am, but when a federal district judge issues a universal injunction that applies not just in his or her district, judicial district, but the United States, and the parties say, Judge, what is your legal basis for doing this? Is there a statute? Is it in the Constitutional? What is the answer?
What within our district and the Southern District of Indiana, the injunction, the preliminary injunction, has been limited to that of the parties and the litigants.
Maybe I'm not being clear. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just, if you could, just tell me the legal basis. Where does a federal judge get the authority to issue a universal injunction?
The authority that judges in the DC Circuit or in other areas that have applied a nationwide injunction, the question that was raised before the court, or the legal standard they have used, is questioning whether or not the federal government, a policy or executive power can be executed. In those circumstances, those judges have issued what been deemed as nationwide injunctions.
I know they have, but what's the legal basis for it?
Again, that's my understanding of when those have been enforced.
Okay. Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.
Counselor, what is subject matter jurisdiction?
Senator, subject matter jurisdiction refers to the ability of the courts to entertain matters. Cases that has to be presented in federal court can be moot, have to be ripe, parties have to be standing, and of course, federal courts can only see cases and controversies.
What is substantive due process?
Substantive due process is the process that is used when deciding the constitutionality of a statute, of a matter, distinct from procedural due process, which is based on the process that the courts follow when people are deprived of the due process of law, property.
I'm sorry. What's the difference between substantive due process and procedural due process?
It's the approach.
And how is the approach different?
It's different because one, the procedural due process refers to the procedure that it's followed, while the substantive due process technically refers to the way the constitutionality of a statute it's viewed. That's my understanding.
Judge, the middle judge, I'll call you. Can the United States Congress do anything, legislate in any area that the Constitution doesn't prohibit?
Thank you for your question, Senator.
You're welcome.
That would be correct. I believe it's under the 10th Amendment. There are certain discretion for Congress to go beyond the list that the Constitution provides in terms of the matters that can be legislated.
So you believe that Congress has plenary power as opposed to enumerated powers?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court has acknowledged that there are some rights and that are not enumerated, and the Constitution recognizes the Congress's ability to.
No, we're not talking about unenumerated rights. I'm talking about the power of Congress to legislate.
Congress indeed has that power as per constitutional acknowledgement, sir.
Okay. So you're telling me that Congress can legislate in any area unless someone can point to the Constitution that says it cannot?
My understanding would be that Congress indeed can legislate extensively. It doesn't have to be enumerated exclusively. I think that's a recognition that Constitution acknowledges.
I don't think that's right, Counsel or Judge. Judge?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the Chevron doctrine is?
Yes, the Chevron doctrine is a Supreme Court case in which the Supreme Court ruled that administrative agencies should be given deference for the decisions that they make. And that decision was questioned somehow in the recent EPA Supreme Court case.
Okay, that's right. What's the holding in Obergefell, Judge?
For me?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm
Start
sorry.
here and go back that way.
Okay.
Obergefell is the Supreme Court case that recognized same-sex marriage.
Did it hold that same-sex marriage is legal?
Well, it held that it is a protected constitutional right.
Yeah. See, that's not the way I read Obergefell. What I read Obergefell to say is that so long as the relationship is not incestuous, that you and I have the right to marry whoever we want to. And there's no reason to exclude people of the same sex. That's very different, is it not?
Well, Senator, I granted you what I believe that's the holding for that case. However, if I were to become a district judge and if I were to apply that case, I assure you that I will apply the holding of that case faithfully.
All right. Counselor, let me jump down here. Can you tell me what, if you're on the federal district bench, you'll be asked on occasion to issue a universal injunction. Can you help me understand the legal basis, the authority of a federal district judge to issue a legal injunction or universal injunction?
Senator, let me start by saying that I have never worked with a universal injunction, nor the District of Puerto Rico has ever issued a universal injunction.
Yes, ma'am.
Having said that, there is a lot of debate as to
Yes, ma'am, but the
what's the
chairman's going to
source?
cut me off. Just tell me what the legal authority is for a federal district court judge to issue an injunction that affects beyond his or her judicial district.
As I said, I have never worked with a universal injunction. My understanding is that it comes from Rule 65 of the Rules of Civil Procedure, which are the rule that governs injunctions. That's my light understanding on the matter. As I've said, I have never worked with a universal injunction.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.